Our public hearing on the College Station Post Office. My name is Cicely Harris. I'm the chair of Community Board 10. First of all, I'd like to welcome everyone today. I'm excited to see so many people out about this very important issue so we can all have our voices heard. First of all, I'd like to welcome our elected officials. I believe we have today, Congressman Espaillat's office is here. And I believe Councilman Perkins will have someone here, as well as the Manhattan Borough President will make an appearance here as well. But most importantly, we have you all, the public here, our constituents, and the people and residents of Harlem. So thank you all for coming out tonight. Oh, great. I did not know that. Thank you so much. We have a representative from Assemblywoman Inez Dickens' office. Thank you so much for coming. So first of all, again, after welcoming you here, as the chair of Community Board 10, I'm speaking for Community Board 10, and there are some things that we definitely want to get out there, that we have not taken a position on this as the Community Board at this time. Just like you, we are here for the information before we think about or draft an opinion or a resolution on the matter. So we're here for information just like you. However, I would like to thank Greg Lackey from USPS for bringing it to our attention, to a conversation that seems to have already started, but thank you so much for being welcoming and coming here today to have this discussion. Also, in speaking to Mr. Lackey, he came to our board meeting, I believe that was September 6th, and actually spoke to the community at that time. And this meeting is the outcry from that meeting. So thank you so much for listening to us, listening to our opinions, listening to the want and needs that we have at the College Station. I'm really passionate about it because that is my post office as well. So I go there all the time. Thank you so much for listening to us. And I know there's been a lot of concern about the comment period that usually goes along with the public's opinion in these types of situations. Mr. Lackey has so gracefully waived that for us because he feels the opinions and the comments of the public is so important. So thank you so much for, again, letting us have more time to weigh in on this situation, because we didn't have adequate time in the beginning, but thank you so much for doing that for us. And then lastly, we just want to reiterate what we are here for. The Community Board is very concerned about the services that are being offered at College Station. Will there be a reduction in that? And will the services that are currently there, will they be made better? There have been so many issues with the services there that there are too many to mention in my welcome, but I think that the public will let you all know what we are looking for in our post office. Also, we are concerned about the landmark position of this station. As you know, this area is very historic, and we don't want to lose that. You know, we're not afraid of change, but we want to make sure that that change is appropriate for our neighborhood. That's all we're asking at this time. And we're also concerned about the pollution. I know that there's the station is already there at 138th. We're concerned about now that the location would change, what does that mean for our pollution? There's a school right there. There's a school at 139th, 140th. There's children there. What does that mean for us as a community? So those are some of the concerns. I'm sure you'll hear a lot of other things tonight. But without further ado, I give you the chair of Landmarks, Raquel Vasquez. She has been instrumental in this. She has stayed on top of this, and I thank you so much. Come on up.
All right, welcome everybody. So I'm just gonna give a brief intro to what our committee heard, at least the September committee meeting for Transportation, Historic Preservation, and Landmarks. So just to recap the transportation concerns that we discussed, There were concerns mentioned about truck deliveries on an easement. That requires BSA approval, and it is to our knowledge that the applicant has not applied to BSA for a permit for that use. There was a concern about additional traffic congestion on Frederick Douglass Boulevard. It's already a corridor with the M10 bus and with just a lot of traffic and a lot of people that were in attendance at the committee meeting last month expressed concern over that. We had concerns about the actual truck delivery, so having a truck come in and make noise potentially on the block and the easement. It's not necessarily a positive impact to the historic nature and the respectful environment we want to create for the historic block. We also had plenty of landmarks concerns. So you know that this is an LPC designated area, 139th Street, 138th Street for Historic Drivers Row, and we definitely want to respect the character and integrity of this district. Without further ado, I think that one of the items that we mentioned at the committee meeting last month is that we wanted to see some sort of impact statement to see the potential impact on transportation, on traffic congestion, on noise, as in addition to pollution, and we wanted that for the next encounter with the applicant. And as Cicely mentioned, we did not take a position via writing on this yet, but we wanted to garner all of the feedback from today's public hearing in order to collect all of the community input that we've had both at the community board meeting, the community board committee meeting, in addition to this public hearing, and make sure that all of the community is addressed in the resolution that we draft forthcoming. So without further ado, we're gonna skip around on the agenda. We're gonna go to the elected officials now. So if I can have a representative from Adriano Espaillat, Congressman Espaillat's office. Thank you.
Hi, my name's David Bailey. I'm here on behalf of Congressman Adriano Espaillat, who's down in DC right now. I've got a statement to read on his behalf. Good evening, and thank you to Community Board 10 for convening this public meeting to discuss the USPS sale and relocation of New York College Station Post Office. I would like to voice my substantial concerns about the proposed move of the College Station Post Office from 217 West 140th Street to 273 West 38th Street. For years, residents of Harlem and many communities throughout New York's 13th Congressional District have been very vocal about their local post office experience. Constituents, especially in areas with large immigrant populations, are unable to access services at their local post office due to a lack of Spanish-speaking staff. In some cases, individuals have been admonished by the USPS employees frustrated with their own inability to communicate with constituents due to this language barrier. There are many elderly patrons who require special accommodations. They have submitted through formal channels reasonable and constructive suggestions with their comments, which have not been acted on in a substantial manner. The reality for many constituents are long waiting lines and incomplete service to meet their postal needs. With these concerns in mind, I recently wrote a letter to the USPS asking how moving the location of this post office will improve customers' experience and whether steps are being taken to address these material deficits. It is unclear whether staffing levels currently offered during retail, lobby, and pickup service hours will remain the same, expanded, or cut. It is imperative that the USPS serve the needs of this community, and I'm concerned that this move is not a step in the right direction. I'm committed to working with the USPS on behalf of our Upper Manhattan community to ensure we continue to benefit from the important and critical services that the USPS provide. Thank you.
Now if we could have a representative from Assemblywoman Inez Dickens' office.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Lamont Mays. I'm the Chief of Staff for New York State Assembly Member Inez Dickens, and I apologize that she could not be here tonight as she is recently recovering from foot surgery. But she wants you to know that this is her neighborhood post office. It's only a block away from her house, and she repeats the sentiment expressed by Adrian Espaillat's office in terms of the importance of this particular post office branch in her particular neighborhood. She has a number of seniors who frequent this neighborhood, who live in the historic Strivers Row, and this is very important to them. Their next nearest post office is more than 2 blocks away, and for many of them, the transportation for their particular advance is very difficult. So she wants to express to the United States Postal Office that she would like to have more public conversation with this local community in regards to what the future of this post office would be. And only with their input can we make a decision, a rightful decision moving forward. Thank you.
Adrian Felton from the Public Advocate's Office. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. We were made aware of the situation in length at our last community board meeting, and my name is Adrian Felton, the Harlem Community Director for Public Advocate Letitia James. And we were made aware in details what the questions are regarding the Postal Service. The Public Advocate's function, her ombudsman function, is to ensure that city agencies follow protocol and operate in the guise and the powers of their office. And it was made aware to us that Landmark, which is a city agency, had not followed the protocols according to the report that we gave. It has been a short window, and what we're doing is we're reviewing exactly what happened, and we're waiting for their response to us. We do have to give them the length of time to respond back to our office, and I will have a follow-up report with the community board and interested parties after they respond to us. Thank you.
Do we have representatives of any other elected officials in the room who would like to speak? Okay, if not, we're going to transition and ask for the property owner representative to come forward and make a presentation.
Hello, good evening. I suppose many of you are probably here to speak to the post office. I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Eric Palatnik. I'm an attorney, and I'm representing the owner of the properties, 272 and 273 West 138th and 272 West 139th. The reason we're here tonight, the reason that I'm here, is for 2 reasons, actually. The first reason is to discuss with you a landmark decision that was made by the Landmarks Preservation Commission over the summer in August to allow for the fixing up of the facades on the 2 buildings. Now, you're both very familiar with the buildings, and you know what they look like, and you know that they had signs over the top, or it used to say drugstore and things like that where the signs were. Those signs covered up transom windows that were beautiful when the buildings were built 100 years ago, or more than 100 years ago. So what we're asking permission to do, we asked Landmarks permission to do, and what they granted us permission to do over the summer was to take down the signs and to clean up the brickwork on the fronts of the windows, and to drop the windows all the way down to the base and up to the top, and generally just clean up the front of the building so that it's restored back to the splendor it was in when the buildings were originally constructed. That was the landmark action that occurred over the summer. The reason we are here now is because you did not have the chance to act on that. We wanted to present it to your committee, but it was August. And August is a very difficult time for people to be at a land use community board or a landmarks community board hearing. So consequently, because everybody was off doing what people should be doing in August, you didn't get a chance to hear the application, and we presented it last month to your committee, and now we've come back again tonight. That application is already approved at Landmarks. They approved it over the summer. Now, I said I'm here for 2 reasons. There's a second application, which is not a done deal yet. And that is right now the property at 272 West 138th Street. which of course is the southern building. The buildings are sister buildings. And the one at West 138th Street, on the West 138th Street side of the property, and for those of you who live there, you know it very well, there's a staircase that leads down to the cellar. What I'm here for tonight to talk about is to request permission to widen that staircase by about 2 feet to allow for the installation of a handicapped chairlift down to the cellar. I'm hearing you say no. That's fine. I'm just here to tell you about it and to tell you that that's the application that we're making. We would like your approval for it because it'll make the building be usable at the cellar level by people with disabilities, and it's a federal law that people with disabilities have access. So that's why we're asking to do it. No, it's not for the post. Let me be clear, Ken, and I'm sorry if I'm not being clear. The post office, what I'm here to speak about the landmarking action is irrespective of the post office. I'm educating you what's going on. The cellar level or the basement level that I'm talking about with the widening of the staircase is not to be used by the post office. That's going to be used separately, and we discussed at your last land use committee meeting that the owners are in discussions with you to allow members of the community board or of the block associations to use that cellar space as they may need as time goes on, and free of charge to come in and use it, to sign up for it.
Are you seeking bonus FAR because of the community use?
No, we're not here to ask you to build anything improper. We're asking you to comply with the federal law for handicapped accessibility. That's what I'm here for tonight. I am not, if I may finish, I'd like to be able to make the presentation. Everybody's screaming out. I don't know if the board members want me to just sort of engage in a back and forth like that. Give me a second to speak, and then if you want to yell at me, you can come outside, you can yell at me. My wife yells at me so bad that don't worry, you can't hurt me. So let me just tell you what's going on. I'm a lawyer, I'm representing the building. I'm asking for landmarks approval to have handicapped access to the cellar level on a staircase that already exists, but when it was built 120 years ago, there were no handicap laws and they didn't require anybody to have access to stairs. Today, if you're handicapped, you have the right to get up and down into places. There's a staircase that's on the side of the building. That staircase is not handicapped accessible. It is not being created or enlarged for the use by the post office. It will be used by people separately. If people in the community don't want to use it, other people will use it. But it will not be used by the post office. Now, the question was asked a second ago about if I... Yes.
We're not voting on this application right now.
Okay.
Is there a hearing scheduled for this particular item? What day is that?
Tuesday the 24th, the committee meeting.
So can we have a presentation at the
Yeah.
24th?
Yes, I'd be happy to.
Yeah, we wanted him to have the floor to talk about.
Just give you explain of what's going on a little bit. And just for your own edification, Madam former Borough President, I don't know how to address you as your former title, but Virginia Fields. Ms. Fields, the Landmarks has tentatively scheduled this themselves for hearing on October 17th, just so you're aware. Just giving you the knowledge that I have. I'm not involved in that, but that's when it's been scheduled. So to go back to the question, then I'll let the post office come up. The landmarking action is a coincidence that the post office is here at the same time. The landmarking action is a part of redeveloping the building for any permitted user to come in and use it. Anything that's allowed under the zoning. The landmarking action is not asking you to violate any zoning. It's not asking you to have any special uses in the property. It's not asking you for any bonuses in floor area or any zoning benefits. What the landmarking action is asking you approval for is to create the handicapped access down to the cellar. Now, why is the post office here? Because the owner of the building, after they got done with landmarks and getting the ground floors all cleaned up and right, now they're going to rent them out to people. They've rented one of the spaces to a gallery already, an art gallery. And now they've signed a lease for the second space, irrespective of the landmark action, not related to landmarking. Nobody's asking landmarks for permission to have an art gallery in there or the post office. They're all allowed to go into the space as of right. Nobody needs special permission for the post office to go there. What you need the permission for from landmarks, again, is just simply for the staircase for the cellar that's not being utilized by the post office. We're here at the same time as them because once we get done with landmarks and the building is cleaned up, then it will be leased to the tenant and the tenant will be the post office, and that's a coincidence that the post office has issues. So.
Adrian Felton, I just have a advocate.
Yes.
As the lawyer for the property, are you aware what, if any, Department of Buildings permits were issued to the landlord to do any work, because the city charter says that whether it's a privately owned space, whether it's landmark or not, when you want to do any renovations to any property, even if it's your private home, you must get permits from the Department of Building. And as the attorney, this is information that you should have. And we should let the public
The
know.
work that's, to answer your question, there are permits issued for the work that's been done on the building, of course.
Can you provide copies of that?
They're all online, and we can look them up together afterwards. They're all on the Department of Building's website. They're all public knowledge.
You guys have what do you call it, a computer hooked to this?
Oh, to
To what's on the thing?
We could do that offline.
No, we had a public hearing and I heard you. If he said he has those permits, I think we should show the public that they should see that. That's just a suggestion.
We'll handle that after his presentation.
So I'm done speaking. I'd be happy to do whatever you want me to do, answer any questions.
So we just have to move along in the agenda. We will engage in Q&A. Please hold your questions. Are you?
I'm finished. Thank you for your time, everybody. Sure, it's Palatnik. That's P as in Peter, A as in Apple, L as in Larry, A as in Apple, T as in Thomas, N as in Nancy, I-K. Eric. Eric with a C. Palatnik. Eric Palatnik.
And just FYI, he in addition to USPS will be seated here to answer all of the community's concerns and questions. So we'll have
more time with me.
Can you give us the owner's name of the property?
The owner, no, it's HYK Properties, LLC. And Ms. Fields, who's sitting in the front row, has had extensive discussions with the owners, and she'd be happy, I'm sure, to share all of the knowledge that she has of their personal names. I'd prefer not publicly to disclose them, but she can certainly give you their names. I'm not going to release the owner's phone number. My phone number, and again, Ms. Fields and the community board all have everything. But in a public forum, I can't. But they have everything. They've been in touch with everybody, and you can certainly reach out to them and get it. I'm just respecting their privacy, that's all.
Excuse me, we're not doing Q&A right now, so we're going to get to that after USPS gets a chance to present. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I want to provide some clarity to some items that he mentioned. He mentioned that he has LPC approval. He obtained LPC approval. This is correct without community board consent. And we actually had to reach out to the Landmarks Preservation Commission and express to them that it was inappropriate to have an LPC hearing scheduled without notifying Community Board 10 that the hearing was even scheduled. During session, when community boards don't meet in July and August, and LPC knows this, they do not take hearings typically during that time period, and they basically went over our head without us and, given an opportunity to engage with the community. So we're outraged. I'm personally outraged because it's typically supposed to come to the committee, the community board, so that we understand what's going on before it goes to an LPC hearing. So at this point, they're coming back to us for a second approval for LPC. They came to us for the committee meeting last month to get this approval, and we rejected it because that same day we found out that the post office was the proposed use of the site, and there was a lot of miscommunication that went on between just a lot of the community advocates, just a misinterpretation of the proposed work and the proposed use of the site to the block association, to the community board. We should not be finding out in a public forum what is happening with the site. And that's what happened when Mr. Greg Lackey presented in front of our board last month. So just wanted to provide that context. And also in response to the scheduled LPC hearing that you mentioned you have, that is not happening. I've personally requested LPC do not take a hearing for this application until this public hearing was held and until the committee was able to organize, and for the 24th when our Transportation and Landmarks Committee will be meeting, and then we will vote on this item. Okay? All right. USPS, would you be able to come, Mr. Greg Lackey?
Hello, everybody. Good evening. I'm Greg Lackey. I'm the United States Postal Service Realty Asset Manager. My primary responsibilities are in the Northeast area, though I do have projects throughout the United States. But they're primarily in the Northeast, and a lot of them are in New York State and New York City. With me tonight, I have some Postal Service representatives. If you recall, at the last meeting, you asked if some people from New York could be here that could answer questions about the operations. They're seated here. We have Diane Jones. We have Derek Jordan, Ada Vera, and Gail Brennan. And when we're finished here, this is going to be like, I guess, a bit of a two-phase presentation and notification process. I'm here from real estate. I'm here primarily to discuss the sale of the post office and the relocation to Frederick Douglass Boulevard. I don't have the knowledge of the operation or the Postal Service, though I did come up through the Postal Service. I am in my 42nd year. But they can answer your questions about the particular operation at the post office and the staffing and the questions like that. I don't have that kind of knowledge. So this is my second appearance at the public meeting for the sale of the College Station Post Office. It's on 140th Street and being relocated to 273 West 138th Street, which is currently a vacant property. And it was mentioned already, that meeting was on September 6th. So thank you for having me back. I hope that's a good thing. And if there are any lingering questions from that meeting, I hope I'm able to answer them tonight. So I may be repeating myself, but for people who weren't at that meeting, Postal Service has been engaged in a program entitled Optimization for the last 7 or 8 years. Optimization is a nationwide effort that focuses on opportunities for the Postal Service to consolidate its delivery operations in centralized locations. So what does that mean? It means that we go into an area and we evaluate, there's 3 or 4 delivery operations. Is there space available that's postal owned that we can move those 4 delivery operations into one location and work from one location? Okay, so once an opportunity is identified, the Postal Service evaluates the benefits. Are there operational benefits? Are there financial benefits? The project meets the criteria that's established for that kind of project. We have projects approved. Then it gets turned over to me. I'm in assets. All right, there's very few of us in the company, and this is what we do. So the optimization program is an effort by the Postal Service to combat the loss of revenues from its first-class mail monopoly. Everybody's aware of that. I'm sure there's a lot of people in this room pay their bills online. They don't get as much mail as they used to, et cetera. Everybody's aware that the first-class mail volume is dropping. And that's why the Postal Service began this optimization program. So this program, over that 7 years, it hasn't saved millions of dollars or tens of millions or even hundreds of millions. It's actually saved over $1 billion. And that's not a one-time $1 billion. That is $1 billion annually in operating savings. So it's been a very successful program for the Postal Service in its efforts to curtail costs while its revenues are declining. So the Postal Service conducts a public process. That's why I'm here. When we're going to have the sale of a post office, sometimes there's a replacement post office, sometimes there isn't. In this case, there is. What happened? Why do we do this? We don't want you, our customers, to wake up one morning and the post office is moved. We want to tell you in advance. We want to help you understand why we're doing it. Okay. I conducted the search for the new location. We had assistance from New York, and we also had assistance from our design and construction people. Obviously, we evaluated each space we looked at, whether or not it was appropriate for a post office, whether it's the right size, whether it's handicapped accessible, etc. The search resulted in this location at 138th and Frederick Douglass Boulevards. Now, one of the first things to note, it's a little bit ironic, is that our current location on 140th Street is not a permitted use in the zoning. It's a residential neighborhood. No, can I finish? Okay. The location on 140th Street is not a permitted use. If we were trying to move the post office to 140th Street, it would be very understandable why people would be upset, because we'd be moving the post office in a residential neighborhood. The location on Frederick Douglass Boulevard, we are a permitted use per the current zoning. Okay. The new post office was originally planned to be about 1,450 square feet. We're currently planning to make it about 2,900 square feet. So it's almost doubled in size, and that will be a benefit for your customer services. The originally planned post office clearly was going to be too small.
Can you please let him finish his presentation? We will have a Q&A portion right after he finishes. Thank you.
You sound like it's done to you.
And that's a question that we'll have to have.
Okay. When the Postal Service has a project, there's planning involved, right? We have to plan on what the size of the post office is going to be. We don't just arbitrarily decide how big it is. You have to have criteria to determine the size. How many P.O. boxes are there? How many window counters are there going to be? What kind of services are provided at that facility? All right? This facility is a finance station only facility. There's no delivery operations. Okay? So there's no letter carriers housed at this facility. There's no mail being brought into this facility that letter carriers are going to deliver. There's no mail processing at this facility. Okay? So nobody is sorting mail here. Okay? This is a finance station. So what does that mean for you? It means that when we're doing the planning for this facility, it's much smaller than a facility that's going to have delivery in it. Delivery facilities tend to be large because there's a lot of employees in them, and there's a lot more activity. There's limited activity at this facility. I know there's a lot of concern about truck traffic, so I'll discuss that right now. A facility like this one gets somewhere between 3 and 6 truck deliveries a day. Got to bring the post office, you bring the post office box mail in the morning. They have periodic pickups during the day of mail and parcels that are going to be brought to the mail processing facilities. And then at the end of the day, when the post office closes, they come and they do a final pickup of the mail. So the truck stops are limited and they're in fairly short duration, because that driver, he comes there, he's not just coming to College Station, he's going to all the post offices on his route. So he has to stay on his schedule. Okay. I know there's also a lot of sensitivity about this Strivers Row. We do not own the building. We would only be a tenant. But I can tell you that we have applied for a change in our design criteria to, we've had an architect into the space. It has exposed brick walls. It has high ceilings. It has a lot of character from when the building was originally built. Customarily, the Postal Service would go in and cover that all up. In this case, we wouldn't do that. We would leave the exposed brick walls and the high ceilings. The facility itself will provide the same services that are at the current facility. There's going to be 3 window counters. There's going to be P.O. box mail. There will be some vending equipment. So, the level of service has nothing to do with how much service is provided. Okay, there are 3 window positions. There's still going to be 3 window positions. I actually find that to be very unusual, because typically when we do these, the new post office is smaller than the post office that's being sold. So you're going from a post office that has 3 or 4 windows to a post office that only has 2 windows. In this case, the post office is going to have the same number of windows. You'll also, if you've been to the facility, you also may have noticed that the owner has already replaced the sidewalk. If you had looked at the sidewalk 2 or 3 months ago, you would have seen that the sidewalk was at a lower level than the floor level of the building. There was you would have been a small step. It would have required a handicap ramp to bring a wheelchair into the facility. If you look now, there's a brand new sidewalk and it's ramped to the same level as the floor level in the building. So wheelchairs or walkers or people won't have to engage a step or a ramp into the building. Okay, there is a bus stop in front of the building, so there's no car or truck parking in front of the building. I mean, that'll stay the same as it is now. There is a loading door on the side of that building at the corner of 138th and Frederick Douglass. The Postal Service engages with New York City Department of Transportation. What they will get is the first parking space on 138th Street, the one immediately at the corner in front of the loading dock, will be Postal Service only parking during postal business hours. I mean, I guess we don't care what happens at night.
Like I said, it's a done deal with you, it seems so far.
This is not a Q&A session. We will have an opportunity to engage with him during Q&A.
I mean, I should stress, the Postal Service is only open from 9 to 5, has very limited business hours. It's not open on Sunday. It's not open on Saturday afternoon. So we have very limited hours of operation. We're planning on staying at the 140th Street location until the construction would be completed, and that would be next spring, probably in April. We heavily publicize the move. P.O. Box, I believe P.O. Box owners actually get a letter telling them, and they also they would keep their same P.O. Box number. It doesn't change.
I actually have a very quick question.
Okay.
Although we're not in Q&A, but you mentioned something very interesting. You said that there's a public comment period. What exactly are you garnering during that period? When does that end? And will the USPS consider, if the community does not like the relocation plan, would you go back to the game board and find a different site?
We looked for a site for 4 years. 4 years.
Not transparent at all.
This is gonna, look,
Wait, excuse me, I'd like to answer the question. Since I conducted the search, and we have a commercial broker. They have been actively searching for a site. It's CBRE, which is the largest commercial real estate broker in the United States. We have looked at numerous locations in this area. Numerous. If you look at a lot of the space that's available in the commercial space on the avenues, we're only limited to 137th to 144th Street and St. Nicholas to Lenox Avenue. It had to be within that area. So first of all, right off the bat, none of the streets have anything available. You only have the avenues. A lot of the space on the avenues...
So just to like get back to my question,
Wow.
actually, just to get back to my question, just to clarify, the public review period that the USPS has does not serve as an open opportunity to engage with the community and reconsider a relocation. So this is not, is this just formality?
Yes, it is.
Rather than us telling you or the community expressing concerns with the move to this location? What is realistic? And what is
We collect the comments and evaluate them, yes.
You have a signed lease, and is it a done deal or not?
Is it a
That's
lie?
the way it
And
is.
don't say that.
You don't need to waste our time, and you weren't transparent, you're lying to us. Is that it? It's a
Has the
yes
lease
or
been
a no.
signed? Has the lease been signed? Yes, yes.
A lease has not been signed. All right? Because it's a real estate operation. You design space, you have to know how much it's going to cost, you have to fund the project. You can't just, you can't lease space without having planned in advance how much it's going to cost.
Can you also describe the comment period itself? What is it? When does it start? When does it end?
The comment period began when the letter went to Gail Brewer's office, but we've extended that.
What's the date of that letter?
August 29th.
Yes.
We're going to get 7 on the side.
Well, I'm sorry, but
Wait.
I do want to say one thing. The Public Advocate's Office has received over 100 complaints about the illegal parking of postal trucks already on 138. And you just told everyone that you guys are working in conjunction with Department of Transportation. On those blocks, it's clear that the signage says do not park. There's an overwhelming rodent population because the street sweepers cannot come through there because your drivers are disrespecting the very sign that you said that you're working with. We have contacted the U.S. Postal Service to no avail. So I gave you that background for my real question. You're saying that it's not an active post office, but you're going to be having pickups 6 times throughout the day. How are you going to mitigate that traffic when you're not even dealing with the traffic that's over there on 138? That's what I'm saying. And what we going to do about the trucks on 138?
On the public comment period, under what authority did it start on August 29th? Yeah, right.
What do you mean under what authority?
What were you following to start the period on August 29th?
Can he answer the first question?
Because it's supposed to start today at the public meeting. That's right. Not when you write a letter to the Manhattan Borough President. I mean, I assume you're familiar with Title 39, 241.4, which shows you what you're supposed to do, and you ignore that. Stand up.
First of all, I'm not going to stand here and get yelled at. Sir, let's recall, I was at a meeting also on September 6th.
We'll engage further, but could you please answer the question from the public advocate?
I was talking about congestion, and was there a feasibility report done on congestion? Because that's supposed to also be a part of when you're choosing a location, and you're supposed to also include current challenges, like 138. Was that done? And if so, what was your findings? And are you going to fix that situation on 138? That's my question.
Are you referring to 140th Street or 138?
I'm talking about trucks that are illegally parked. I'm saying illegal because the signage says no standing at any time. And they are there all night long. The buildings that are across the street where there are people living, they have an overwhelming rat population because there are no sweepers able to come down there. There is heavy congestion due to the trucks. We have engaged you about this. So now I'm bringing it now to here because here we are with this, what do you call it, a financial location where you said that there will be financial facility where there will be 6 drop-offs and pickups. They are gonna no one's carrying them on their back like Santa Claus. They're gonna come with trucks. So we have more trucks in this situation. So my question is about, was there a feasibility report done about congestion? And how are you mitigating the already situation that the Postal Service is giving the village of Harlem with the rat, you're contributing to the rats. So I need to know, what are you doing with that, and how are you gonna deal with the new trucks?
I'm not sure how to answer that. The 140th Street location is mid-block, and the new location is on the corner. I should think that alone should help with the truck traffic.
There are, every night, right, like when you leave here and your car comes and pick you up, ask them to take you through 138 between 5th and Lenox, and you will see a line of your trucks.
But that's
And also,
That's
the reason
Lincolnton.
why there's no parking there, because there's a blind spot when people are driving. And when it blocks off, there are a lot of accidents that happen on that block because of your trucks.
But that's not College Station, that's Lincolnton Station. I get it, but
Just to add to that briefly, and then we're going to move on, but just to add to your point, the community board also receives calls from constituents and residents about this issue as well. And we make, like me and my committee, we also reach out to DOT constantly about this, and they say we have no jurisdiction because this is USPS, this is the federal level, we have no jurisdiction. But, I mean, you're here right now, you can answer to these questions that we do have concerns about this.
And if I'm
But
going
that-
to add to, there's an obvious disconnect here. You know, and with all due respect, you just told the people in Harlem that you did extensive review to look for a location, and it had to be within this block radius. That's the same radius of where your trucks are parked. So, I think it's fair to assume that there's an obvious disconnect here. That the postal, so you're not even aware that this is an issue. There has been hundreds of letters written on behalf of the people that live there and the rest of the people. There have been accidents. There's a lot involved in it. So to tell us in one breath that you've been looking for space in this area, but then you don't even know that you got a truck issue over here, I don't know that they send the right person to come and speak to Harlem.
I think, however, I do think this is an opportunity to point out the difference between Lincolnton Station, which is a delivery post office, and College Station, which is a finance station. Okay, the finance station is primarily a retail operation for the sale of stamps, people who drop off mail, pick up parcels, go to their P.O. boxes. That's a much different kind of postal operation than Lincolnton, which is where the letter carriers are. So of course you've got lots of truck deliveries, and I'm not saying anything about the truck traffic. I'm just trying to explain the difference between the operations. But you've got a lot of truck deliveries because they got to bring the mail up from Morgan where it's processed so that the letter carriers can deliver it. So yes, there's a lot of truck traffic. Same as if you went down by Morgan, downtown, you're going to see a lot of tractor trailer traffic because that facility is bringing mail in from all over the country and sending it out all over the country. So you've got, you have different levels of post offices. College Station is the post office, type of post office that has the most limited amount of operation because it's just retail. Like if you went down to Morgan, they have retail, they have delivery, and they have mail processing. So.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lackey. Are you done with the presentation? Okay, so we'll be able to ask questions momentarily. Thank you.
Okay, are we going to sit here?
Oh, yeah, we can take a seat.
Or they can sit here and I can stand there. They need just 4 seats. Do you have to move? Do you have to move this or use that?
Honorable Virginia Fields, representing the Block Association for West 138 Street is here. And we're gonna be, you guys don't have to leave, we're gonna engage in Q&A
Good evening, and to Madam Chair of the Board, and Madam Chair, Vice Chairs of the committee, and all of the committee members. On behalf of the 138th Street Strivers Row Landmark Block Association and 139th Street Kings Court West 139th Street Association, I want to thank the members of this committee, the Transportation, Historic Preservation, and Landmarks Committee, for convening this very important community hearing regarding the proposed relocation of the post office from 140th Street to 138th Street. We are especially appreciative because this convening is the very first time that we are hearing any level of details, process, and information that clearly should have been communicated with this community as far back as 2014. To date, as far as the timeline, what we have received is that on August 27th, 2014, United States Post Service held a public meeting at the Greater New York Harlem YMCA concerning the relocation of College Station. The community board representative was opposed to the relocation, as well as the number of community residents who were in attendance. 3 years later, September 6th, U.S. Representative Mr. Gregory Lackey spoke during the community board's public session regarding plans for relocating the post office to the proposed 138th Street site. 3 years later, that was the first time to our knowledge, unless that can be refuted, of course, by Mr. Lackey, that 138th Street was ever mentioned. And I want to point out, too, that he spoke during the public session of the community board, which is a part of their process, the first 30 minutes or so. Anyone can come up and speak about whatever they want to talk about. That is when he spoke. The community board, based on my understanding, was not aware that this presentation was going to be made. They were certainly not invited to come to make a formal presentation. So in our estimation, that cannot count as a part of a public hearing. Thirdly, as a report in the DNA Harlem, that is when the broader community became aware of this issue, because we all read it, and that's how we became aware of it. Letters were sent to Congressmember Espaillat and Manhattan Borough President Gail Brewer requesting a written response in 30 days. And I think we also heard Mr. Lackey say that from their perspective, that started the clock for 30 days. It does not start the clock. This is the first public hearing. The clock starts today. On that 30 days, USPS also posted a flyer on the post office door announcing this community meeting, even though they had the wrong location. They had Harlem State Office Building, so it looks like there was a lack of communication even with the community board about where the community board meeting was going to be held. Bottom line, in our view, none of the above actions constitute compliance with the Code of Regulations Title 39, Section 241-4, that speaks to public process that should take place when there is consideration of an expansion, a relocation, and construction of post offices, nor has the respect nor regard for this community been given with respect to this proposed plan. There has not been any outreach or efforts or attempts to assure increased opportunities for members of the community who may be affected by this move, along with local elected officials to express their views concerning the contemplated project since a specific site was identified. I think we heard that there have been a number of years, that 4 years or so, that they've been looking. But once a site was identified specifically, that is a community. Those are people living in that community, a historic district, who have the right to have input however a decision is ultimately made. So due to a serious lack of transparency from the United States Post Office, as well as the property owner, HYK Properties, and failure to properly communicate since the Harlem article was reported, we request that the Transportation, Historic Preservation, and Landmarks Committee, Manhattan Community Board 10, support a request from the West 138th and 139th Street Block Associations to mandate that the United States Post Office Service follow the Code of Federal Regulations, Title 39, Section 241, again, that applies to any expansion, relocation, or changes. Clearly, there are many issues that you will hear tonight that have been raised, including landmark preservation issues, as the proposed location is within a landmark district. And we believe that the 30 days that are required under federal code will allow time for a much more comprehensive review of the information that's being presented tonight and what we are hearing for the very first time, a discussion and a much more appropriate response. The articles that I'm referring to specifically under the regulation speaks to the following. When there is that the USPS is required to identify the need and fully describe the project that is under consideration to meet that need. That has simply not been done tonight, and it was not done on the 6th of September. They're required to explain the process by which the Postal Service will solicit and consider input from the affected community and solicit a working relationship with the community officials for any success of a project. They are required to plan, which we heard, but also attend and be placed on the regular agenda of a public meeting or hearing to describe the project to the community, to invite questions, to solicit written comments, to describe the process by which the community's input will be considered and advertise that meeting or hearing in a local general circulation newspaper. I've not seen anything in local papers about this event, about this issue. They are required to give local officials a letter describing the intent project and at any public hearing to advise local officials and the community of their appeal rights, time included, limitations to address for an appeal, and they are required to review comments and notify local officials of such decisions. Not less than 15 days after the date of the most recent public hearing or after receipt of notification, they are required to make a decision that takes into account relocation to another building or construction of a new owned or leased facility, and again, to notify local officials in writing at the same time, post a copy of the notification in the local post office for the community, and to take no actions on a decision for at least 30 days following notification of the local officials and the community. They are required to advertise for sites and existing buildings, and when the decision is to advertise for sites and existing buildings, and after such sites have been identified, to advise local officials in writing of all the contending sites and with respect to all sites not selected to provide an explanation. This notice will advise local officials and the community that no decision to select the site will be made for a minimum of 30 days and that comments on those discussions of all sites have been solicited. They are required to post a copy of that letter in the lobby of the post office for public action. And once a specific site is then selected, to notify local officials again in writing of the selection and to take no final decision to acquire or lease until those 30 days notification. And lastly, they are required to give public officials written notice of any timely written objections or recommendations that it does not plan to adopt or implement. And I took time to read this because I think regulations are important. And regulations are in place, especially on projects such as this, to give the community an opportunity to be heard. Yes, we are in Manhattan, but we're also a community of neighborhoods where we have built and spent a lot of time investing in our neighborhood. And as a former city council member in this district, I recall 140th Street when it was dubbed by the New York Times as perhaps the worst block in this city. We invested through housing preservation and development programs to renovate that block, make it possible for people to own as well as rent at affordable and moderate rates. And guess what? The post office was a stabilizing component or factor in that block. It was built around that post office. So the attempt has been to improve the services, not move the services from 140. So as far as the hearing tonight, members of the committee, we respectfully request that you support the recommendations coming from 138th and 139th. The president, Dolores Dupree, is here from 139th Street, as well as a number of members who live within those two blocks, that at least they be mandated to follow the rules and starting tonight as the public hearing and the 30-day clock starts now, not when he sent the letter to the borough president. Thank you.
Mr. Lackey, how do you answer that?
Hold on.
Okay.
Hold on one second. Hold on one second. Okay. We will now begin the public comment period, but we have two organizations that would like to present prior to the rest of the community. We'd like to ask the Postal Workers Union to come up.
Good evening. Good evening. I'm Jonathan Smith, president of the New York Metro Area Postal Union, the largest local in APWO. And today I have with me my executive vice president, Tiffany Foster, my director of organization, Kevin Walsh, my fine director of communications, Chuck Lackey. I got it right, Chuck. And my political legislative director, Nora Taggart here. And after our previous speaker, there's not much more that needs to be said, you know? Rules do mean something. What we are concerned about is not only the Postal Service not following the rules, because me being the president of this union is kind of used to the post office not following rules, you know. Where I deal with that on a daily basis, you know. They think they write the rules. They don't abide by their own rules. So this is not a new occurrence. And it was mighty funny to me that when this meeting was open, I think there were some very distinct questions that was asked. It was, how is this going to affect the senior citizens, this move to more combustible? And when Mr. Lackey came up here, they do what the Postal Service always does. That was not answered. He said, is it a done deal? And they did what the Postal Service always do. That was not answered. Yeah. And we can go down the litany of talking about the traffic and how the traffic was going to affect. In fact, I think they said when the next time that they come to a meeting, we expected an impact statement on how this was going to affect the community, and I didn't see anything move. But I'm not surprised, because this is how the Postal Service works. This is what they do all the time. You know, what I'm concerned about is they seem to go to these communities and they have absolutely no respect for the people in the communities, because you're talking about profit, but we're talking about service. That's why it's called the Postal Service. And you leave, and I do not like when you come and you play with our intelligence, you know, and at this time, you come here and you're playing with our intelligence and you're saying, oh, nothing's going to change in the Postal Service, but then you said, oh, well, it won't be a problem because we won't operate on Saturday. Well, where you're currently at, you operate on Saturday. So you're changing already. You're already starting to take services away from the community. Stop playing with our intelligence. You're saying, oh, how is this going to affect the workers? Well, they said, well, we'll look into that after removal. You're playing with our intelligence. You know, at some point, when are you going to come here with this, is not with this political jargon, but when you're going to come here with some answers? When you're going to come here with an actual proposal? Because here's the deal. The deal is done. And they playing games with us. You're putting a handicap ramp off a building that you might not be in. Stop playing with our intelligence. Yeah. So, they created this. They keep saying that College Station is a finance station. No, College Station is a carrier delivery station that they decided 4 years ago to turn into a finance station by taking all the carriers and putting them in Triborough and putting them in Lincoln, only to ship them back to deliver mail in this community. Why do they got to come back to a community they serve when they already have a building right in the middle of the community? One of the things that disturbed me most about the Postal Service, at least make decisions that make sense. But the only decisions that they make that make sense, because all this is about greed. This is about big business. This is about money. And instead of us telling the truth, we want to talk all around the real issue, because that's what this is all about. Because no one in their right mind thinks that you're going to do better moving from a place that you own to moving to a place that you don't own. Stop playing with our intelligence. I mean, we had the same situation happen over in the Bronx where we went and they were trying to get rid of jobs, even though they lied and said we're not trying to get rid of jobs. But when the press got too heavy, they said, no, we're not trying to get rid of jobs. So when they couldn't get rid of the jobs, the Postal Service and their genius decided to get rid of all the mailboxes. And then he says, oh, you all know that the Postal Service is losing money. Another lie. The Postal Service is not losing money because packages are going through the roof. You think all them trucks sitting out there with nothing in them? Are they going to gas up all these trucks to send them to deliver nothing? Stop playing with our intelligence, because that's all this is about. And I'm so tired of the lies. I'll be glad. We're the union. In 2014, when we had this meeting, and we got everybody together at the last minute, because of course they didn't let us know, he had a meeting on September 6th with the community board. They decided to notify the union of their plans September 8th, conveniently 2 days after the meeting. Stop playing with our intelligence. All right? Now, they sent a letter about this meeting, and they sent a letter October 3rd. But the letter is dated September 20th. It's dated September 20th. Why? Because they know they have 15 days notification period. So now they try to doctor up the letter to make it look like they were within the regulations. Stop playing with our intelligence. I mean, at some point, we got to stop playing games. Because when is the Postal Service going to realize this is not about profit? This is about people. This is about quality of life. This is about service. We are not fighting for the postal business. We are fighting to preserve the Postal Service. And Harlem deserves the same service as anybody else. Stop playing with our intelligence.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your words. I'd like to invite Athena Moore from the Manhattan Borough President's Office.
Channel 7 is on their way over.
I'll be brief. It's a pleasure to be here as always. Athena Moore, Director of the Northern Manhattan Office on 125th Street for the Manhattan Borough President Gail Brewer. We circulated this letter at the Community Board meeting, and so I really just want to make sure that the community knows that we've been meeting with the block associations, making sure that the community voices are heard through the Community Board, and we certainly have already had a meeting with the United Postal Services. And I know that the issue that continues to be expressed is just a concern for the relocation without the proper notification, community input. Certainly the other issues that had impacted the community in the past, whether it was overcrowdedness, just the need to make sure that services as they are being addressed and put in place, that it's with the support and the input of the community voices that have been heard here tonight. I also want to acknowledge that it was told to me that there was some discrepancy around when the notification happened and whether or not the 30-day window was in effect in terms of hearing from the community and their input. We definitely are working with both sides of the table, and we will do our best to make sure that all of the concerns that have been addressed here today are being recognized by the United Postal Services. I trust that they have been listening intently and making sure to take note to go back and figure out a plan. But I also heard just from the brother who spoke a minute ago that there's still very much huge concerns that must not go unnoticed in this community of Harlem. And so whatever I can do to be a bridge, I'm here. The letter, I won't read the entire thing, but it basically just says that we definitely understand that the impact on jobs is a concern to the community. We also recognize that we want to make sure that services are not lost. We understand that this is a retail space that will be relocated to this new location, and we want to make sure that there's not any net decrease from the current facility, because that will definitely have an impact on community. We also included in our letter that we recognize the need for more services, expanded services, and definitely not a decrease in services, and that the hours of operation are consistent with what the community deems is fit and important for them. We also note in the letter our recognition of the very overcrowded facilities that have been in place in the past and how long the wait times are and how that has impacted the community dramatically. We also recognize this being a historic district, and we want to make sure that it is preserved, and definitely want to make sure that we accommodate change, but at the same time that it is in a respectable period of time where the community has input that is integrated, not just heard, but integrated into any plan moving forward. So we work with the United Postal Services as well as, United States Post Office Services, and we also will be working with the Community Board, okay? And whatever our office can do to support, we are here. Letters, copies are available. Thank you.
Thank you, Athena. I'd like to ask Val Bradley from State Harlem Now.
Thank you, Community Board 10, for allowing Save Harlem Now to address this group and to weigh in about our concerns with moving a post office to a historic district. When is the last time a historic district had a commercial or governmental entity sited in their neighborhood? Tell me when. Obviously, there's been no coordination with the Landmarks Preservation Commission, which I would assume would not allow a commercial concern like a post office to be sited in a hallowed historic district. This historic district has been special for Harlem for decades. Strivers Row, we were kept out of this district for so long. It was left empty rather than it be rented or sold to African Americans, so that by the time we did get it, we felt it special, we treated it special, and we continue to treat it special, and we will in the future. Now, I want to talk about preserving what we had, the few historic properties we have in Harlem compared to other neighborhoods in other parts of Manhattan, like the Village, which has about 2/3 historic properties or historic districts, the Upper East Side, the Upper West Side, and then we have Harlem, which has about 0.3% landmarks. Why is that? So when you cite a post office here, we're talking about, again, eroding probably what we have as an existing historic district. At one time, there was an attempt in the 40s, to knock this historic district down, 138th and 139th. And I believe this is the beginning of the preservation movement, because residents in those buildings rallied together and stopped it. The city was going to knock them down. Well, the residents, I believe, will rally again and stop this. Now, what I want to address also is another historical fact. The building in which the College Station Post Office is currently sited is also historic because it was built expressly for Harlem. It was designed by William Dewey Foster, who was an architect hired under the WPA movement in 1934, December 1934. It was completed in 1935 at the cost of $150,000. It's a neo-federal brick and limestone building. Now, if we had the same luxuries that other neighborhoods have, that building would be landmarked now anyway. It deserves to remain there, and we don't know what the post office is going to do with that building. They've not indicated, or maybe I missed that. I came in a little late. Did they say what they were going to do with the building? Are they planning to pull it down? Because it's part of our history, too. It was built when Harlem was black. 1934. We were black. We were here. They built it then, 1934. It deserves to remain there. It deserves to still be a postal facility. And we plan to, as an organization that is concerned about the built environment and the cultural environment of Harlem, to ask the LPC to perhaps look at calendaring and saving that building. So that's what I'd like to say. I would hope that the post office considers the history of that building, but also the history of the neighborhood it's trying to cite a post office in, which is highly inappropriate. Thank you very much.
Let's begin Q&A. If folks can line up against this wall. You'll just have 2 minutes to make your statement and questions, just in consideration of everyone's time.
Mr. Lackey, I'd like to ask, what is the reason for the relocation?
But I wanted to say something. This is why I'm here. All right? This is why I'm here. This is why we go through this process. Because I don't live in Harlem, okay? I told you last time, I was born in New York City. My whole family lives here. I don't. That's why we're here. Because it's your post office, okay? And I've built over 400 post offices. And I've gone through this in 400 communities. So I understand this, okay? And there's some other things I could say, but let's answer the question. All right, the question is, why are we doing this? Whether or not the business decision, people in this room agree with the business decision, the letter carriers were moved to Lincolnton. When they moved the letter carriers out of College Station's 15,000 square feet. They're using, you go into the post office, how much of that post office are they using? You heard me say the new post office is going to be 2,900 square feet. Okay? That's 15,000 square foot building on 2 floors. They're not using it. That's why we sell these buildings. And I sell a lot of buildings because they're largely vacant. We have to heat them, we have to cool them, we have to maintain them. A lot of them are older buildings like College. They need new roofs, they need new air conditioning, boilers. They're very expensive to maintain, and we're not using them. Now, sometimes we're able to use them. Like a district or an area, and the post office will say, hey, let's not sell that building. We know it's mostly empty, but we need a place for our postmasters to have meetings, or whatever, that maybe it's going to turn into a training center or something like that. That was not an option here. So this building, that's why we're selling this building, because we're going to sell a building that's too big, and we're going to move into a brand new building that's more appropriately sized. That's why we're doing that.
I just have one point to make here. I use that post office, and it's difficult for me to get to that one just in and of itself. But it's a situation where something is broke and you need to fix it, not discard it, throw it away, because that's the situation in that post office. It's the services are not, it's not being run properly. There you go. You know, so that's the issue.
Any other committee board members want to speak? Okay.
I have a couple of questions. One is about the landmarks approval. And how did that get done so fast without anybody knowing about it?
Hi.
If we're going to change something on our house, I'm told it can take 3 years to get landmark approval.
Yeah, landmarking is, yeah, it's tough. It's tough. It takes a long time. The landmarking process that occurred over the summer was not done without the knowledge of the board members and the tops of the board. If I could just finish. If you could just let me finish. If you could let me finish my entire statement, I could clarify, but it's not getting that way. So just let me finish and explain. We tried over the summer to have a meeting. During that time, there were extensive discussions went on with, I have letters from the West 138th, 139th Block Association. If I can.
You have it from alleyway committee. Y'all tried to backdoor the Block Association.
No, he has a letter from 139th and 138th Street Block Association in support of the front windows.
Yes, this is what please, just let me speak. I'm not trying to lie to you. I'm trying to tell you what I know, and then you could decide after I tell you what I know, and after you speak with Ms. Fields, if she corroborates or tells you I'm a liar, then call me a liar. But let me finish, please. Okay. Okay. We worked over the summer to try to get it on your community board's agenda. We worked very hard to try to do that. It came into the end of August when this is for the facade. When the decision came to answer this young lady's question, it came up to the time when a hearing was going to occur at Landmarks, and there had not yet been a quorum set here because of summer vacations, as I said before. At that point, that information was presented to the New York City Landmarks Preservation Commission, exactly as I just said it, that we could not get a quorum at the community board, and you have a hearing scheduled. Landmarks Preservation Commission themselves made the decision to hear the application. We did not put a gun to their head. We don't have that kind of power. They made the decision to hear it, and we went along with it. We let the community board people that we were working with at the time know that they were hearing it in their absence, and we had the hearing. After the hearing, we let the community board know that they held the hearing in their absence, and the community board asked us if we would come 3 weeks ago or 2 weeks ago to a community board meeting to present it in a show of good faith. And that's how it all played out. It was not done behind your backs. It was done with some discussion. I understand why you would think that, though.
Because the thing is that, as I mentioned earlier, after you made your statement earlier, during July and August, community boards are not in session.
Right.
LPC and
Of course.
everybody knows this.
Right, of course.
Right?
Yes.
So we were in correspondence, and we said that we would be able to see you for the September hearing date, the scheduled
Right,
meeting
correct.
when we're currently in session. Then we come find out that LPC already heard and approved your application, and we were not even aware. LPC didn't communicate with us, and you guys didn't communicate with us that the hearing was still scheduled despite not being able to present to the community board. So that's the issue.
I understand that, but we didn't, as you know, we were trying in good faith to reach out to you over the summertime. We spent a lot of time with trying to. I know we're not.
So we have to move on.
Madam Chair, since he invoked the Block Association, the Block Association was not informed that the Landmark Preservation was hearing this. We were still trying to help them get the hearing in September. So we were not.
You didn't know that. I understand that. I knew that you didn't know there was a hearing going on. Landmarks went and made the decision to hold the hearings, and that's what happened.
And LPC, Landmarks has acknowledged that they were incorrect in what they did.
Yeah,
Because
so-
we're not supposed to hold the hearing without our input.
They should pull their approval until they get the committee approval. They should pull the approval.
We're working with the public advocate's office, who's on top of that.
The issue seems to be the landmarks in that regard.
Yeah. All right.
The other question I have is about the Americans with Disability Act and that access to the basement in a non-disability access building. It's a 4-story walk-up. The only thing in the basement is garbage. They say they're going to put in a community room, and that's why they need it.
Let me.
We don't want, if you have something that you need access to, then come.
We don't, the landmark, the request for the handicapped access that you're just mentioning, and then the reason I spoke about that a moment ago, is Department of Buildings has requested us to provide the handicapped access to the cellar. It's an examiner's request. It's not, there's not garbage down there. It will be a utilized cellar. But it was the Department of Buildings. We'll get you the copy of the Department of Buildings objection sheet so you could see that.
I think there are a lot of issues that were talked about tonight. We understand, or I understand certainly that post office is a retail use, and that is a retail, as much as we may not like it, that is a retail part of the building. Okay, so we understand that. What we don't understand is two things. One is how this process could possibly happen. Secondly is, where's the common sense, right? If you look around within a few block radius, and I don't know who you use as a real estate broker, I know CBRE, I do. Millions and millions of square feet of deals with it. But there is a new supermarket that has gone in, one block up. There is plenty of retail all around that area that is vacant and empty. Why would you pick a historic building, then ask to put a loading dock on a historic street, which already has two churches, one of which is active on a Saturday morning, and across the street from Adam Clayton Powell, probably the most active church in Harlem because of all the visitors, the Abyssinian Church, which already creates traffic up and down there. You know, I don't understand why you would think that that is a smart, intelligent use. So I can only suggest, right, that somehow this process was either usurped or not run properly, because either there's somebody made a good campaign contribution, or it's complete common, or there's just ineptness in the process, because there's no common sense here. There's just no common sense. You can go through the laws. Yes, it's a permitted retail use. Yes, as a federal agency, you can probably override landmarks, and yes, you can probably override DOT. I understand all that. I'm in development, okay? What's lacking here is simple government common sense, all the way up and down the chain. And I'd like to hear your answer on that, because it makes no sense with all the retail space that's empty on the avenues for you to want to put a truck on 138th Street with a designated parking spot on an area that's already difficult for the residents to park on.
No. And you know what? Well, you know, I'm the one getting up here. You know,
is it a done deal?
The man is accusing us of bribing people and things like that. All right.
Choose my words carefully, and it'll be a matter of public record if somebody got a campaign contribution. So we can look that up. Okay, but let's skip that for a second.
Can I answer your question? Can I answer your question? Can I answer your question? First of all, I already told you the lease isn't signed. Okay? Now, you're in development. Don't you need to control space? Don't you need to control space before you lease it or buy it? Don't you sign a contract so that you have a due diligence period?
So you have a signed letter of intent, is what
We have an agreement. I won't get into what kind of agreement. It's my business. I'm sorry if I think a public meeting isn't a place to discuss private contract details. Now, if people stop yelling at me, I'll answer the question. I'll answer the question. I'll answer the question. Okay? First of all, I have two different processes here. I'm selling a building and I'm leasing new space. So if I have a buyer for a building and I have nowhere to move, I can't sell them the building. If I have a place to move, but I don't have a buyer for the building, I'm not allowed to do one without the other. So I simultaneously have to have a buyer and I have to have the space that meets the Postal Service criteria. And I'm sorry, you can tell me all you want about all the space that's available for lease. It has to be the right size. It has to be the right configuration. We looked at space that was, you walked in, it was on the 2 different levels, which you can't have in the middle of the post office. You're already talking to me about access and senior citizens walking around a building. You can't have a step in the middle of the floor. We looked at lots of space. A lot of the space that we looked at is very narrow. And we tried to look at space. We brought in architects and said, can you take this bowling alley space and somehow configure it so that people can walk in and out of space this wide all day long. And the answer was, how can you do that? How can you bring people in and out of a post office that's literally that wide, which a lot of the space in this area is very narrow.
Renovate. Don't relocate. Renovate what you have.
I actually have a comment.
You're really not answering the question.
I'm not. So the what?
With all due respect, you're not answering the question.
I'm trying to answer the question. I told you, we have a space that's under control but not leased. I've said this at least 4 or 5 times now.
And is the building sold?
What does under control mean? This building sold. Can you clarify what under control means?
When you're doing a real estate deal, when you're selling property, the buyer gets a due diligence period in which they have an opportunity to examine the property before they have to buy it. They're allowed to terminate the contract before you reach a period where, say, it's a hard date. After that date, they're obligated to buy the property. It's the same thing when you're leasing property. You're going to have a certain amount of opportunity to look at the space. You're going to do an environmental investigation. You're going to look at the space before you go and lease it. That's where we are in this process. Okay. Now, when you're asking why is this taking, when I don't know what that's got to do with me.
It's sold, 140th.
What's the intended use of the 140th site if it is sold by the USPS?
How do I know?
Who are you guys engaging with to purchase the site?
I'm not privy to announce that.
He said he will not announce.
I can't announce that.
He will not announce.
I can't announce who the buyer is.
The post office site. That's what he said. No,
It's not sold.
So
We own it.
What I'm garnering from what he's saying is that in order for him to sell the 140th site, he needs to solidify a contract of sale, and then also a lease agreement with the proposed new site. So in order for them to sell, they have to already get committed to a lease.
Also, in terms of the community process that was enumerated earlier, it also wasn't appropriate to begin to announce in letters to Gail Brewer's office what we plan to do until we reached a certain part in the process. It doesn't do us any good to announce that we're going to sell the post office and move it and then find out that the deal falls apart for whatever reason. Could be our reason, it could be any reason. And now we've made an announcement that we're going to have to rescind. I had to wait until it was appropriate to begin this process. And we have never said that the community couldn't comment after a meeting. Again, we had to wait also till the summer was over to come to the community board meeting. When we came to that meeting, we said that we would extend the comment period. Again, tonight, we're extending the comment period. We want your comments.
To Mr. Lackey's point with respect to saying that they're extending the period, what I was saying is that there are specific regulations under which you should be operating, and it is not just left up to you to decide, we're going to give you a few more days, a few more days.
Ma'am, I understand.
And you were not at a public that was not a public hearing on September 6th. You were simply standing there speaking at the public session of the community board. That is not defined as a public hearing.
Ma'am, I was invited to be there.
Even if you were invited. Even if you were invited to be there, that does not constitute a public hearing. This is the public hearing where notices have been sent, where communications have gone out, where there was sufficient time for people to hear and know that it was going to be a meeting, and you see the people that have come out. That was not a public hearing, so it cannot be defined that way. Additionally, you said that it wasn't appropriate to say to the borough president what the site was. So if that was not the case, What did you say to the borough president? Got her to write a
No,
letter?
what I said was that needed the appropriate time to make the announcement to the borough president. Why would I send the borough president a letter before I had a site to tell her about?
So could you tell us what you asked the borough president in your letter?
I've provided the letter. The letter has been posted
What
at
did
the
you
post
ask
office.
her for?
We told her what we were doing. The letter said what spaces we had looked at, why we selected this space, and that there would be a comment period.
So you did identify the space?
Yeah, in the letter. And we identified spaces that didn't work.
According to whom?
According to the postal.
According to somebody who signed you. I'm just asking for clarity purposes. So you did a study that you could produce for us saying why they came up with the reason of not using the other spaces?
It says in the letter, actually.
Where's this letter?
Can we distribute copies of the letter?
The letter that they wrote to her, because I don't have a copy of it, so I apologize. Pardon my density.
Thank you so much. I didn't have one. I appreciate it.
Yes. Wait, am I supposed to? Okay. Is it for me?
We'll find out in a second. We told you to.
Yeah, it's for you. I got a question. How does you say that the services in the proposed new facility will be the same as the old, or maybe better? Or at least the windows are going to be the same, the number of windows? I ask, how does 5 windows in the existing building equal 3 windows in the proposed building? As President Smith says, please don't insult our intelligence. Second question.
There's only 3 active windows at college.
There are 5 windows.
Yet, wait, hold on.
Now, I'm going to answer your question. Optimization programs, we delayed mail throughout the country. There were 3 or 4 of those 5 windows were open every day.
Okay. Why would there be 5 windows when it's a delivery unit? Because people are coming to pick up their letters and their parcels. Once you remove the delivery from there, you have fewer people coming to the building. So they reduce the number of active windows. So the number of windows was reduced when they moved the carriers.
That's not true. That's not true. And contractually, that would be a violation of the contract, because the contract clearly says the staffing is by work hours, not by size of the facility. So if you didn't reduce the work hours in there, which you did not, because everybody said the line is going out the door and stuff like that. So you did not reduce the windows because you moved the carriers. You reduced the windows because you reduced the service to this community, which wasn't right.
I shouldn't have answered that.
That's called sabotage.
Second question, which is following up on that, is Ms. Felton has very graphically described all of the trucks that are parked all over around Lincolnton, even on the sidewalk, and how postal management has ignored complaints about that now for years. They continue to park the trucks there. They don't move the carriers back, which would mean less trucks there. So how can we expect you to respect our community in this new facility when you clearly haven't respected it over at Lincolnton?
My name is Derek Jordan. I'm one of the postal managers over at Lincoln Station. And I wanted to speak in regards to the concern with operational. And one of the concerns with the vehicles is that the post office have addressed some of those issues. They actually rented a parking lot on 150th and I think it's Frederick Douglass Boulevard where we moved most of the vehicles. What happened is in this facility we range somewhere around 19 to 20 vehicles. 15 spaces was rented at the parking lot on 150th Street. During the peak season, which is coming up now, the holidays, we rented more vehicles. The post office sent us more vehicles. Now these vehicles is what is now parked in the area that we're trying to work out now of finding a spot to put them until the peak season is over with. But that's why you still have those vehicles there. If you noticed about a month ago, a lot of those vehicles was moved from the area. Yes, there was. I headed the project on relocating the vehicles myself. And if you go on 150th Street and Frederick Douglass Boulevard, you'll see a parking lot where all the postal vehicles are parked. We still only have maybe around 4 or 5 vehicles that's actually parked there. 2 of them are parked on the side on 139th Street in the front of the post office. Another 2 are parked in the parking bays, and another 2 is parked in the rear part of the postal building, where there's a parking lot at. Those additional... Yeah.
Your drivers are not complying with the new lot because they're accustomed, I'm sorry, they are accustomed to parking there. And maybe on paper, sir, this is what you're supposed to be doing. And I am not at all trying to imply that you have not done what you say on paper. But we live here. I may work for the public advocate, but let it be known that I am a resident of Harlem. And I'm telling you, when I come through that block, they are still there. So maybe you should have a meeting with your drivers during the overnight shift to ensure that they are actually complying with that order of being on 150th, because it is not going down.
Okay.
You also have a parking space. I live next door to Lincoln. So through my window, I literally can see the space where you can fit at least 4 to 5 trucks.
Right.
You literally put maybe 1 or 2 trucks. You stopped in the summer because I personally reached out to SBI's office, and that's when the trucks moved off the street. There have been 6 trucks for the past, say, 3 weeks along the street. So much so that now the 32nd precinct is dropped off a truck there along the block. So now you have 6 trucks, and you have a truck that's been abandoned, dropped off by the 32nd precinct. So I don't know what you're talking about in terms of 155th, but that just 150th Street, but it's not working.
Okay, the trucks that you see now that's on 130th Street are the additional vehicles that was sent.
6 of them.
Right, that was sent.
To be clear, there's 6.
Okay, that was sent to the post office for this peak season. During the peak season, we have a high volume of mail, so the post office send us extra equipment, and the vehicles are part of the project, which helps make sure we can expedite as much of the mail to
You actually have space to fit trucks, so you can actually have 3 trucks in that parking space. You don't use them. You leave the gates wide open and you don't park your trucks there. So I don't understand, why would you even have to use that space at 150-something Street where you can actually physically fit more trucks in that space? And you know for sure the only people that park the cars there are people that work there.
And honestly, just to let you know, even if it is peak season and you need extra truck, it should not be at the peril of the community that you're serving. You have a responsibility, even if you have to rent space in a local parking garage that's close. That's one right there on, what is that, 137? What is that, 137? There's parking garages all over the place. Your peak season should not affect the people who live in the community, those quality of life issues where street sweepers can't come, and we have an increasing overwhelming of rodents because those trucks are there.
Okay, and
we're not empathizing with the fact that you got peak season, because that's the job you got signed up for, but it should not be at the peril of my community.
I'm sorry, if I could just add something, if I could add something to this, okay, I'm the president for the 32nd Precinct City Council. I've spoken to the NCO officers who are responsible for the sector where Lincolnton Post Office is. This issue came up at the precinct council meeting many times. Residents from Mr. Holmes' building have come out there to our meeting about this issue. Your postal workers are still abandoning trucks, that's what I'm calling it, wherever they need to once they're tired. And in fact, one of the officers who's responsible for that sector said that they definitely put pressure on you all about being more responsible with moving the trucks. But when the postal workers, it's been admitted by someone from the Lincolnton station, when they're exhausted and tired and coming in late, they drop the trucks wherever. In fact, they're not just there, they're moving them all over the neighborhood. I even saw one parked, about one or two parked, one by the charter school on 5th Avenue and West 142nd Street, and another one opposite from the historic armory. So they're still abandoning trucks everywhere in the neighborhood. And I hope that someone also mentions, because I was told in Lincolnton there are 3 post offices housed in Lincolnton.
It is.
That's what you're not, no one knows that. And
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is 3 post offices. But that's not an issue we're trying to hide. They do have 3 post offices. They do have 3 post offices housed in that facility, and that's why we have that many vehicles. But like I said, we're still hunting. We're still hunting for more spaces to put the vehicles. Right now, we have what we have and what we was rented at the new parking lot, and that's where we have the vehicles that we're able to put, and we relocate them to that facility. During the peak season is when we receive the new vehicles, which we now still have to find a place to put those and address your concerns with that.
Well, will you mitigate with your drivers and do something to ensure that they're following your clause?
Okay, we will definitely address that with the night supervisor to make sure the drivers are parking in places where it's not impacting the residents.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Lackey?
Yes.
I was wondering, you commit this evening, after everything you've heard from the community, to trying to find a space other than the space that you're currently considering on 138th Street. Do you commit to that?
I will.
Okay, so you will.
I will.
Yes.
People surprised of other locations that you're considering?
Yes.
Okay. So if I contact you, you'll give me the information I can dispense it to the community?
I would think that at this point, I would do it in a letter to Ms. Harris and to Ms. Brewer.
The community board.
The letters will be posted in the lobby of the post office.
Okay, but so who do we contact then to find out what other...
My name and phone number and email have been on all of the
Okay, so I can
notices.
email you directly and say, which other properties are you now going to consider now that people are so opposed to the 138th Street location?
What properties you're going to propose?
No, what properties you're considering now that you see that the community...
We would probably do it in official correspondence. That's why I'm saying. It would go to the community board. It would go to the borough president's office. We could copy the 2 block associations.
What are your boundaries again?
137th and 144th in Lenox and St. Nicholas. It's not a big area. It's not a big area. I can include the congressman's office in that. We usually don't contact the congressman because there's a congressional liaison office in Washington. They usually handle that, but I could copy. I have his card.
If you can let us know.
Yeah. Right.
Tiffany Forster, Executive Vice President of New York Metro Area Postal Union. There were a couple of things. I don't have a question, but I have comments. Okay, and this is information for the community. In Lincolnton Station, as the young lady behind me said, there are 3 post offices located in Lincolnton: Triborough, College, and Lincolnton. 4 years ago, as it was stated earlier, he's been looking for property, right? He stated that earlier. So it has been by design, this move. It's been in the works for 4 years. That is why the carriers were moved from College Station and placed into Lincolnton, because it was by design to eventually sell this building. Okay, so let's pay attention to what is being said. and not let our emotions clog our ears. Listen, earlier he also said, will be. Those are the 2 words he said, will be, when he talked about the relocation of College Station. He said, will be located. That's not proposed, right? That's not what that sounds like to me. Okay. The next thing he said was about decline. Hold that for me real tight. The next thing he said was the curtail in cost while revenue is declining. Let me tell you why the revenue is not declining. The overtime is shooting out the roof. Post office is not paying overtime and double time to its employees just because it's out the goodness of their heart. If they are losing money, right? They are not losing money. Post office doesn't receive any taxpayer dollars. It is self-sufficient. It is a wealthy company. It's about money. It's about big business. That's all it's about. Now, the parcel business in the post office is out of the roof. Okay? Your parcels are in Lincolnton Post Office. So now your parcels have to go to College Station. So when you go to get it, it ain't never there. Right? So your lines are out the door on purpose because you have college employees that are working in Lincolnton building. So when he talks about there won't be any effect to your service, that's not true. We've done this before. We're from the Postal Union, and we go to all of these town hall meetings when we're notified. When we're notified. Because we didn't know that they were going to be addressing the community board on September 6th. We found out after the meeting. Now, what happens is, this is a formality. The chairperson of the Landmarks Committee asked, is this a formality? It is a formality. Because the community from Triborough did the same thing. They came out, they spoke against all of that. The move, how it would affect them, receiving their parcels, the service, they spoke about all of that. This move happened. Triborough is now in Lincolnton building. What happens is the carriers are moved or traveled from Lincolnton Post Office back over to the original destination, and then from there, they start to deliver your mail. There you go. That is exactly why they're so late. That is why they're out in the streets at 8 and 9 o'clock at night. So your service is not going to get better. People think that, oh, the union is out here fighting for the jobs and stuff like that. I'm a member of Community Board 10 as well. Not only a union representative, but those people that work there that are frustrated because they are overworked, understaffed. So you have employees that are shipped, sometimes, not most times, from Lincolnton Station, where they have to box the mail and do the parcels, to now be transported and sometimes walk back over to College Station to then work on your window. We've had to fight with postal management to not get rid of the jobs that they have there already. Because we knew that that was going to further degrade the service to the community. So this is a formality. Let's be clear. It is a formality. They've done this in other post offices. The new locations are never the same size of the old post office. And the amount of windows that they have open right now is because they decreased the staffing. It's not because of a decline in revenue and volume. It's because they have deliberately decreased the staffing because they moved the employees. If they would put the carriers back, like one lady here said about renovate. If they do that, they can bring the carriers back. And you can get your mail on time. You can get your parcels delivered. So what happens is they are mandated. The carriers are not supposed to be in the street by after a certain time of night. If they are, they get in trouble. So now they can't bring your certified letters upstairs to your door, right? They can't bring your parcels to your door. No, they can't do all that. Your service will not get better. Your service is going to get worse. The traffic in your area is going to get worse. Excuse me, in our area is going to get worse.
How do we stop it?
What you're doing right now, our elected officials, the people we put in office, the people we didn't put in office but are in office, we hold everybody accountable. We hold everybody accountable and remember that they work for the people.
That's right.
And fight for us and what we want and what we don't want.
What happened to Peter Stuyvesant Station? People there.
Well, we have to.
So I just want to let you know that it is a done deal. Listen to the keywords, will be, right? Your service, the windows are going to be the same size. It was already said, there's 5 windows. They're currently only using 3. Why? Because that's all they got in the building. Purposely understaffing. Purposely understaffing. Your service will not be better.
Thank you.
Yes, hello, I'm Chuck Lackey. I'm the Communications Director for the New York Metro Area Postal Union. And I'll have a question for Mr. Lackey. But first, those who have the energy to write something down, I would suggest that everybody go to the website of the Office of the Inspector General of the United States Postal Service. There you can find 2 audits that were done. One that was done in 2014, Post Office Relocation Process. You'll see exactly what's supposed to be done and what these people haven't done for years. An example, you ask what's the process? Well, in this audit, they checked into the relocation of 114 post offices. 25 of them had appeals that people were challenging. Of those 25, they reversed 1. And the reason for that is the same people who decide what post offices should be relocated are the same people who are going to assess your appeals. So is it a done deal? Is it in the bag?
Yeah.
The people who sell the post offices, CBRE, I mean, if you're impressed by the world's largest real estate broker, check out the Postal Service Management audit of CBRE real estate transactions and see what they recommend. CBRE is selling to their own clients. So when they're selling a post office, they sell the post office to one of their clients, so they're getting commissions both ways, selling it and buying it. That is corrupt. I don't care if there's bribes being put out or it's incompetence. The fact of the matter is we have to wake up, challenge it, and to our elected officials and our board members and whatever who think that they're getting something nice by this guy saying he's expanding the comment period a week when he knows well that that comment period should start today. So I'm asking Mr. Lackey, can you commit now to the people of Central Harlem that the comment period for this fiasco is going to begin tonight and last for at least 30 days? That's my question.
Didn't I already announce
to
that?
Mr. Lackey.
I thought I announced that 10 or 15 minutes ago, but I'll confirm. Excuse me. Not only will I confirm that, I already said I will run another ad in the Amsterdam News asking for your comments. It'll be, I think, comes out Thursday. What do you mean, correct address?
Well, the people
For
in
me?
the Harlem State Office building tonight who read your initial flyer and missed this, what about them? How could someone who's a
I
real
changed
estate
the
expert
ad.
confuse the Harlem State Office building and Truro College? Explain that to the people here.
There was miscommunication.
On whose part?
I'll take,
Community board?
excuse me, sir, I'll take the blame if that's okay with you, okay?
How about apologizing to people for that? For the people who didn't know about this meeting,
I
still.
will apologize, but I also ran an ad in the Amsterdam News which said right at the top of it, change in the location of the meeting. It was right at the top of the ad. And that those ads weren't cheap to run. It ran last week.
What date? Was it 15 days before this meeting? No, so you didn't follow the rules once again.
Under the Landmarks Commission, which you have a building in the Landmarks Commission. How did you accept a lessee for a space without going through the Landmarks Commission for approval if it wasn't under the master plan that was submitted when you started to take over the building? There's some steps that you need to take when you're doing a historic infill that was not completed and not done. Now you're asking us to do a lift. In the master plan, there was no reason for a lift. And you have to go back to the Landmarks Commission whenever you're gonna make a renovation or add to whatever you started out with. Was that done? So,
I'm not sure what you're asking what was done. I'm
no,
not,
I'm asking you, did you go back to the Landmarks Commission to make an addendum or ask for permission to do some of the things that you're asking?
the staircase, yes.
Staircase?
Yes. Yes.
The staircase for a basement?
Yes.
You're claiming that you're doing a handicap access for
To the
your building.
basement, yes.
Why do you need a handicap?
Because when
access?
the plans were at the New York City Department of Buildings for review, the plan examiner who reviewed them noted on his objection list that this building needs to have handicapped access, and he would not issue the permit for the building unless it obtained access. Excuse me? No, we're here now. That's what I started with. That's what we're asking you permission for that.
You're saying in order to gain access to 270th Street, which is on 138th Street,
To get to the cellar,
to get to the doorway.
to the cellar.
That's what part. That's what part that's there with the floor. The community.
To the community room. Yeah.
Was that listed in the master plan to have a community room, that you would need a stair lift to access the building?
It was in the original plans, and then after the job application was approved by Landmarks over the summer, it went to Department of Buildings. It went, yeah, it was approved over the summer. That was the discussion that we just had a few minutes ago. It was approved by Landmarks over the summer without the board's consent, and then the applicant went to the New York City Department of Buildings, and Department of Buildings examiner issued what's called an objection for the handicapped access.
So the community board.
No, that was the discussion. The community board is upset about that.
You said they were putting a community room there.
If there's any use of that cellar level, the Department of Buildings asked for handicapped access. That's why we're coming.
What's your intended use of that room?
Right now, it's being designated as a community room, as a quote-unquote a community facility space. It could be utilized by anybody. It could be for the residents, could be for people in the area, could be for anything. Thank you.
I'm a resident of
Good evening.
38th Street, and going off of what my neighbor just mentioned, you said that the board, or excuse me, that permit was filed with the Department of Buildings, and since we've been sitting here for the last 2.5 hours, I checked all the permits between the year 2000 and January 1st, 2016, and nothing was actually filed for 273 West 138th Street for what you just mentioned. So I want to know.
The permits were not issued. The permits were rejected by the Department of Buildings because the handicapped access is not there, which is what brought us back here tonight to ask you permission. Yeah, no, there's been filings done for that building. We'll get you the filings. The architect that's here tonight didn't handle that, and I didn't handle the filings at Department of Buildings. But there are filings at Department of Buildings. That's why we're here tonight.
But you're adding that because you're adding a basement use which wasn't on the original.
No, it was on the original plan. When it went to the Department of Buildings for the permitting, as you know, in real estate, you have to get your discretionary approvals first. Then you go back to the Department of Buildings.
You can override that objection if Landmark doesn't give it to you.
I'm not familiar with that provision.
Yes.
You may be, but I'm not familiar with that
There were
provision.
no major alterations for, I guess, A1, A2, or A3. So what are you guys trying to change or alter besides?
The buildings were derelict before the current owners bought them and rejuvenated the buildings upstairs. So they got the permits for the upstairs spaces. And the downstairs spaces will get you whatever they have. I did not do the permits at Department of Buildings. Neither did Wilson, who's here. He did the landmarks architectural drawings. And you're asking the question now for the permit. So tomorrow we'll get in touch with the architect that did the filings that triggered the landmarks objection, and we'll deliver it to you. I spoke to the young woman from Tish James' office. I don't know if she's still here. But we told her we're going to get her that information tomorrow.
The building said you needed that ADA access was because you said you were putting a community room.
Yes, the owner said, the owner, community facility, the term community facility does not mean that it's open to the community. It's a zoning it's a zoning designation. Well, what I said to you was what I said to you last time, which is what the owner has had discussions with people in the neighborhood about, which, no, you asked before, your exact question, if you go back to your record, was do you get a bonus for the community facility use? That was your question. The answer to that is no. We're not building any bigger building. The buildings were built in the 1800s, and they're staying exactly the same size. The question is, what use are we putting the different floors? So the upper floors are residential. Use group 2, that means people could live in it. The ground floor is entitled to be use group 6 or use group 4. The cellar level is entitled to be use group 6 or use group 4. The owner has decided to put residential use group 2 on the upper floors. Those people are in there. The ground floors, they desire to do retail. One is the art gallery, and the other one is the post office that everybody's upset about. The downstairs was proposed to be what's called the community facility space. That could allow it to be used as a community room, it could be allowed to be used as a medical room, it could be allowed a medical office, it could be allowed for a lot of different uses that are classified as use group 4. What the owner has discussed with the community board, and he's been trying to communicate, is that he would be willing to, if the community board or any civic group in the area wanted to rent this, not rent the space, wanted to utilize the space for periods of time, that he would be willing to enter into an agreement with them whereby if they wanted to use the space, they could sign up for it. I'd imagine very similar to what Toro did here. We're all here tonight. I'd imagine somebody said to Toro, would it be okay if we have meetings from time to time, and an agreement was made. It's the same thing the owner is offering here. If you don't want to use it, you don't have to use it.
For the record, he presented that at our committee meeting, and we object. We have.
Yeah, you don't have to take it. It was an offer. You don't have to take it.
It's not, I mean, but it's an inappropriate negotiation. It's an inappropriate negotiation and offer.
I apologize. We didn't mean to be inappropriate.
Last thing I have is for the postal person. Mr. Lackey, you mentioned that there are no like steps or lifts or whatever in post offices. You guys had to raise like the ground level for the 138th location. I work in the Lower East Side. I go to our post office for my office at least twice a week. There is definitely a lift and stairs inside of the post office.
Ooh. I wasn't referring to any other post offices but the one that we're talking about here.
Right, but you said that there are none like that. I mean, I'm telling you that.
Oh, no, there's handicap ramps, there's lifts, there's all kinds of ways to provide handicap accessibility.
There are 2 different levels, and that's why they had to raise the location, and I'm telling you that there is because I go to this post office all the time.
I think Grand Central Station Post Office is on 2 levels too.
Yeah, but it's certainly not the preferred way to build a new post office. If it can be avoided, you avoid it. Well, we had an opportunity when we looked at one of the available storefronts in this neighborhood that our design and construction people came back and said there's no way that we're going to be able to use this post office with the 2 different levels of the floor. So I said that's why I asked these people to be part of my team. They went in, evaluated the property, they came back and said, no way, we can't approve you trying to use this for post office. It's not going to work. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Nancy Brown. I'm a resident of 138th Street, Scribes Road, and I have 2 questions. One for you, Mr. Lackey, and one for the developer. There's an August 29th memo from you that says that there were 4 facilities that you looked at, and none of them worked except for the one that was on 273 West 38th Street. But I also took a walk around in the neighborhood, and I'm not sure what the boundaries are, but there's an empty building on 101 Frederick Douglass Boulevard and 136th Street. It's been empty, it's unused, and it just seemed to me that with adequate renovations for the post office, you would have space for your trucks, because we all know that there's not going to be just one truck in 138th Street. I mean, we just know, but experience has told us that. You have space for trucks, you have space for loading, you have space for ramps, and the building, and put your own loading docks, and then if you didn't want the whole building, you got a whole lot of space around where you can put the trucks behind the building. So I'm wondering, that was like 23.
It's outside the,
55.
it's outside the preferred area.
There already proposed plans for that site. They're proposed.
It's outside the preferred
I
area.
was just wondering, that was my,
Ma'am, it's south of the preferred area.
So, quick question, are there ever any exemptions to being outside the preferred area?
Yes. Yes. And I can even say where it might be. We did look at a site between 136th and 137th. It was actually one of the sites that had a very narrow storefront because we were a little frustrated not being able to find something. There's been instances where we'll find a good location and it'll be on the boundary. It'll be one block outside of a boundary. Now, in the city, the boundaries are fairly, they're more confined than, say, if you're out in the suburbs or in a rural area. In a rural area, you could have a 20-mile area that you're looking at. But yes, and ma'am, if you provide me with that address, we'll go look at it. I'll go look at it.
I'm sorry, when you say preferred area, meaning what?
Okay.
40th Street, it can't be no more than 3 blocks away or 2 blocks away? What is that? I don't understand.
Well, I'm not supposed to look outside of those boundaries at all.
So what are the boundaries?
All right, the boundaries are established by the district, which runs the post office in New York. And it basically has to do is they look at where other post offices are and where the business area is for that post office. So does it encroach on another post office? They look and they also look for logical boundaries as much as you can. And in the city, that's fairly easy to do because you got avenues, you got your grid. But they're the ones.
For this particular site.
137th to 144th from St. Nicholas to Lenox. So it's a easily defined area.
But he did say that he is open to looking at other spaces,
I-
so we made a note of that. So he gave the boundaries, so make him an offer.
Which other, I have a question. Which other sites are you currently looking into besides this one?
Well, once I controlled this for due diligence, and announced the location to the borough office and started coming to these meetings, we're not looking for any other space. Why? We're focused on this space.
You just said.
Actually, were you willing? One of the questions from the persons who were over here.
No,
they asked you-
the gentleman asked me if I would go out and look
You
again.
said you were open to exploring other locations after this public hearing, and now you just retracted that.
No.
Yes.
No, you asked me what I'm looking at now. Until tonight, I wasn't going to look at anything.
No, but the question, the gentleman here, with
Yes.
the yellow shirt,
Yeah, tomorrow, starting tomorrow.
starting tomorrow.
Tomorrow. First of all, I have to write a work order to the broker to go out and look, and I will come up and walk the streets myself, which, by the way, I've done twice.
We have to go in order. Thank you.
Okay. You can ask me after. Yes, ma'am.
I was at the September 6th meeting, and I believe you presented to us, you had the plans, and you said, as a courtesy to you, I'm showing you these plans. And you said that at C, we're going to have a community room for you. Now,
Oh, that's,
Most of us, wait, let me just finish. Most
Yeah.
of us who live in this meeting, we're homeowners. And so when we entertain in our home, and we decide who we are going to entertain, and who we're going to be in our homes. We know our neighbors. Now, the thing is, a community room, so then we're gonna extend this railing into our block to provide a stair lift to something that was not a part of the whole master plan. But now you've got this open community room that where you're going to invite not only the people, okay, so is it open to only the people in the building? But if it's outsiders, you know, we've got a whole bunch of outsiders.
No, I miss, go on. The word.
Why is the community room a benefit to us?
Here, okay, let me explain that. It's called a community facility space. It's a term of art in zoning. And it's a designation for the different kinds of, like this building you're in, a college, is called a community facility. When they file for permits, they say on their permits, community facility. That's the term. A church is a community facility.
We get that.
So that's what that is. So the statement that I was making wasn't that it's going to be a community room open to the public. What the owner wanted me to offer to the community, which I've heard clearly that nobody wants, was that if anybody of the groups that are in the community wanted to utilize that space for meetings, such as this meeting right now, for example, then that's it. That's all that was. No, I know you don't need it. She asked the question of what it was about. That's all that was. And everybody here has said, no, they don't want that, and that's fine. That's what that was. That doesn't mean bringing people, I wasn't saying that we were going to bring like party people in to come and hang out in a room downstairs.
Thank you so much.
There's something that is not being said at this meeting, and it is that for many years, the Postal Service has been selling off historic post offices that belong to we the people. It doesn't belong to Mr. Lackey, it doesn't belong to management, it doesn't belong to CBRE, who, by the way, the owner, who's a multi-billion-dollar man, is married to Senator Dianne Feinstein. How convenient. So we have to look outside of the problem for a second and look at what they have been doing throughout the years. And what they have been doing is they're going into these, taking away these beautiful historic post offices that were built by our ancestors with their hard work and their hard money, with public money, with taxpayer money. It wasn't paid by Mr. Lackey or postal management. And then they sell it. They turn around. They totally ignore the community who are fighting to preserve their own history. They turn around, and let me show you, between 2011 and 2013, CBRE sold, and mind you, they're getting double commission because they represent the seller and the buyer. They sold between 2011 and 2013, 52 postal properties for $166 million that were worth $232 million. So when they say they're doing it because the post office is facing financial hardship and they need the money, that's crap. They're selling it because in the world we live in now, in this country, the only people that have any rights are the millionaires and the billionaires who happen to be married to senators and congress people, and our congress people are sitting here making excuses. Where's the outrage? We're supposed to be representing the people. We're not supposed to be pressing money interest. So CBRE, the owner, Richard Blum, who's married to Dianne Feinstein, senator of the U.S. Congress, he will make double commission to add to their billion-dollar coffers while management sells the public out that we did an oath to serve this country. Serve, not make money. For FedEx and UPS, by the way, we deliver 30% of their mail because they can't do it. And one more important thing. Once they sell these post offices that belong to the Postal Service, they go out and they lease other areas. And conveniently, a few years later, the lease is up. And the community is without a post office. And that is something that is not being released. You lease, you're not guaranteed that post office.
That's right. Stop giving them a you want your post office to stay where it's at.
My name is David Payton, and I live 211 West 140th Street. And I think you're doing a disservice to the elderly and the disabled by moving the post office from 140th Street.
That's right, that's right.
Good evening. Mr. Lackey, at September 6th meeting, when you came before the community, as if the clock was starting then, which it didn't, when you came before the community, one of the questions that was asked was whether or not that post office building was sold. And we learned from you that you had a buyer, there was a buyer, and that person left. They decided to jump ship. That is correct, right?
That was several years ago, yes.
Okay. Nonetheless, we learned tonight, that basically you can't sell that building unless you have a definite other place to relocate the post office.
Correct.
So with that being the case, it seems to me that you're particularly pushing for this because I'm thinking maybe there is somebody in the wings that's waiting to purchase the current post office, College Station?
Well, I already told you that we have a buyer.
Oh, okay. I didn't hear that in the back. So you're saying you have a buyer. Well, I'm going to definitely say I agree with the union. I would like us to keep the post office that we have. I would like for the post office, because one of the other points that I raised is you didn't seem to know the answers for the operations concerns. Okay? I said that we needed to have some official people from the post office, and no disrespect to the managers or the supervisors for College Station and Lincoln Station, but where are the other people, the postmaster? Exactly, the postmaster. Why isn't the postmaster here? That's what we would like to see here in this community, because I'm sure neither of you made the decisions about College Station being sold. Did you make that decision, ma'am?
No, they didn't. No.
Okay, exactly. So you basically have this lady and this gentleman here as scapegoats.
That's right.
They had nothing to do with College, your insistence on selling College Station. I have a problem with that. Furthermore, somebody was talking about the money, because it sounds like you guys don't have a money problem. So just to take the line from Jerry Maguire, show us the money. Why aren't you showing the statements and showing proof of exactly what is happening with the post office in terms of revenue dollars? We just heard it mentioned about UPS, FedEx shipping that's also being done. But if I could make another point, how many people in here order from Amazon? Raise your hand.
That's their biggest, that's
a big client for the post office. And from what I see, when I looked around, I saw a fine fair in the Bronx that had Amazon lockers. I see other stores that have Amazon lockers. Amazon is big business, and you guys are definitely getting a lot of it. Many packages are dropped in hallways by U.S. Postal Service workers from Amazon. So you guys crying broke, I'm not buying that at all.
Don't buy it.
I have a problem with it. And I also have a problem with the Port Service. I feel like it's definitely a plan to fail intentionally.
It is.
You want that post office to fail.
You gotta say
so
it.
that people would be so excited about anything being better. They were like, hooray, we're all 138th Street when we're not. Okay? And we're demanding that we want better service. We don't want our seniors quivering and shaking on their feet. We want the service to be right the way it should be. If you can squeeze 3 postal stations into Lincolnton, that means College Station needs its own post office and all those employees need to be over there. I'm tired of being the running for it. When I needed my package, I ran back and forth between Lincolnton and College Station. It was ridiculous. And I know a senior who happens to live in the building across the street from where all those trucks are, where they've blocked. I've seen fire trucks not able to get through the block for emergency service. We have a nursing home here. We love our elders here in this community. I don't know what other communities you've been to, but we're not standing for it. So with that being said, I should not have to run back and forth between post offices. I want to go to College Station, where I've been going, born and raised here, and I want to continue to do the same. Thank you.
I would like to ask if the U.S. Postal Service is still under the purview of the U.S. government.
No, we're a quasi-governmental agency. We have our own budget. We're separate from the federal budget process.
But is there any oversight? Is there any federal oversight
yes,
to what you do?
Congressional, and there's a congressional
So did you,
Postal Oversight Committee.
so did you meet with our congressional representative and brief him on what your plans were?
No.
And why not?
Not required to, actually.
You're not required to, but you just said something about some kind of congressional control. We have a congressional representative of this district.
I've been in contact with your congressman, but the letters go to local government. They don't go to your congressman.
After the fact, can you speak to this, Troy?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Troy Outlaw. I'm representing Congressman Esbiat here. We were notified way after the fact, after this process was even done or isn't done or whatever is going on here. So we would like some clarity as to what's going to take place next and where we're moving forward. And we do have power oversight, and the congressman will be involved.
Well, the congressman should give leadership as to what is to happen.
Right. We want the congressman to stop it.
Exactly.
We hear the community. We hear the community. Because you put us in office, so you're the boss, and we will lead this. All right.
Yeah, I'm back. Jonathan Smith, New York Metro, President of New York Metro. My concern is, we talk about the current post office being in a historical location. Yet, you refuse to show this community the respect to say who the buyer is and what they plan to put on that spot.
Yeah.
Because that will have a lot to do with preserving the history of this community. How could you come to this community and disrespect it to the point where you won't even tell them what you plan to build, who's the buyer of the current post office, because you said it's already sold. So, he says he has a buyer. So who is the buyer? Do you plan on putting condos there? Because that's important. Do you plan on putting a supermarket there? Because that's important. Who is the buyer? You need to show this community the respect and tell them who the buyer is. Excuse me? They're not going to answer that. So that's what I'm saying, that you are completely disrespecting the process. You're disrespecting the community. You're talking about preserving the beauty of the community, but you won't tell them who's coming in their community. I mean, come on. Stop playing with our intelligence. Stop playing games. For once in your life, find a word in the dictionary, and it's called the truth. Find it.
Yeah, John!
Two-part question, very brief. First part to Mr. Lackey. If what you described as a loading dock, I believe, or a loading door.
It's not going to be a loading dock.
It's a floor-to-ceiling door on 138th Street, because we saw the plans and we heard about it at the community board meeting about a month ago. If that door did not exist, would 273 meet your qualifications for a post office?
No.
Okay, and then my follow-up question is to the gentleman from the developer. I'm sorry, I've met you, but I can't remember your name. Yes, I know in the community board meeting you told us about the art gallery and the need to bring in art. But, you know, given that this change to the landmark building facade on 138th Street happened without any input from the community board and kind of quick and dirty over the summer, I really deeply question the motives for that floor-to-ceiling door on West 138th Street. And I'm curious if you asked for that door after you learned the qualifications for the post office.
I will find out for you the exact dates that they entered into with the post office. I was not aware that the post office was even involved with them until probably, I think, after I got back from Labor Day, for my weekend away on Labor Day. So I was not aware that they were here with you on September 6th, and I was not aware that the owner had entered into a discussion with them to lease the space.
This is not a post office being built
This is not a post office being built to postal plans and specifications like a freestanding new construction would be. We call these alternate quarters post offices. We haven't discussed signage. Signage is going to be determined by land.
Signage for what?
I would think that landmarks is going to determine what the sign's going to look like.
Okay,
Mr. Lackey, I have a direct question. You've been very clever in your answers. When I asked if you had a lease, you said no. That's a correct statement. We then got that you have a letter of intent for a contract. I'm going to ask a very specific question with relation to that letter of intent or a contract. Do you have a right to break that lease or that letter of intent based upon what you heard here tonight?
Yes. The gentleman was asking whether or not there's a contingency clause in the lease where we wouldn't have to sign the lease. And I said, well, yes. I mean, the lease isn't signed, so.
No, but the letter of intent is usually based upon what you hear. If the community doesn't want it, I'm not saying you're going to act in that way or not. We haven't done that. But I'm asking you have the right to not go there based upon if you decide to accept some of the things that, I'm not asking you whether you want or not. What I'm asking is, based upon what was said tonight, if you decide to accept some of these concerns, you have the right to withdraw from that agreement.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Here's the post office later, and we all know that there's going to be more than one truck because of all the truck laws. Do you have plans of using the alley that's right next to that alleyway? It just seems to me that there's, that you have your trucks parked in there, that have access in there.
Yeah. We already got a letter from the, I forget the exact name of the homeowners association for that alley. Now, there's no plan for our trucks to use that alley, or park there, or anything else. We have no rights to park in that alley.
What do you think? Glad you came?
All right, we're gonna wrap this up. I just wanted to recap. Lee and I, we thank you guys for coming out and for expressing your feedback and providing input to everybody who was here. We also thank the representatives from the elected officials' offices and the union. Thank you, everybody, for coming and expressing your input. As for next steps, so as the gentleman mentioned from the applicant, from the applicant's team, we're going to have a committee meeting scheduled on Tuesday, October 24th. This is when we're going to vote on the LPC action he's requesting. But in addition to that, Community Board 10, we are meeting with LPC to make sure that this gets overturned, at least the action that he said during the summer that took place with our input. We're working very diligently to make sure that gets overturned, and we're taking everybody's feedback into consideration for that. The next thing we're going to do, we're going to write a resolution with our position and vote on it, we presume, next general board meeting, which would be in November, the first Wednesday of the month. So we
encourage all of you all to write to elected officials, write to Congressman SBI.
Write to us.
Because right now, it's on the federal level where we can make a difference, and it's in the SBI's office right now, so we need to give and keep talking about it.
Is there a specific recommendation with respect to the time period that the clock starts? Will the board take a decision on that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The clock should start tonight.
The clock will start tonight.
30-day comment where? I was going to bring that up. Now, if you remember, when it was asked about the comment period and how would the community be notified of that, he said there will be a notice put up in the post office. From our experience, it's always one notice, and it's in an obscure area of the postal service. So what I suggest, community board and elected officials, is that you see what you can do about forcing postal management to mail it to all of the residents in the community. That way, all of the residents in the community will be made aware of where they need to mail their letters, their comments, and what the time frame is that they have in which to do that. Because you will not know it, and I am telling you that. From experience, we've been fighting with the post office on relocating post offices since we've been in office since 2012. And they never notify the community. It's only one posting in a very obscure area in the post office, because that's how we found out in 2014 about College Station being on the shopping block. I just happened to make a visit to the station and saw the letter in the corner.
Well, in this situation, that's not true. I have pictures of.
You weren't there.
Well, I'm not talking about that situation. I'm talking about this situation here.
I'm still making a suggestion that y'all haven't been able to.
The supervisor had to send me a picture of where they posted it, and they had it in several locations in the post.